Hello, this is Brett from PM Squared Consulting. This is a quick overview of OKRs, how they might be applied to premium healthcare. So overall, OKRs are a way of taking the clinic's mission and vision and cascading it down to what people do day to day. So we should be able to take your overall mission and vision and cascade that down to the strategic goals that you need to achieve this year and say for the next 5 years. Then each goal should be broken down to what objectives do I need to satisfy this quarter in aid of achieving that annual goal. And from there, we can figure out what are the key results you'd expect to see, and then below that, what are the activities we do. Now, this cascade exists in your mind. So the leadership team already has a vision for this, but we need to get it out of your mind and share it with the rest of the organization. This overall view is that long-term view you have for the organization. Those strategic goals, as I said, are, forecasting where you expect to be over the next 5 years, but really you only have clarity against the next year. These objectives are obviously for this quarter and maybe next quarter, and these activities are today. So we're breaking that long-term view down to what do we do day to day to ensure success. And OKRs are focused on making that the drumbeat, the heart of how you manage the clinic. So we've done a number of clinics, and this is an example of a typical clinic OKR, where we're going to take a verb, noun, what the key result is, the target that you need, and the date. So for example, we dealt with one clinic that wanted to reduce the time to diagnosis. So this is the time from when the patient first calls the clinic for an appointment to when they've had an appointment, we've done the test, we've got the results back, and we've diagnosed the issue with the patient. So the key result in this case would be that elapsed time from call to diagnosis. So the verb is reduce, noun, time to diagnosis. Key result, elapsed time from first call to diagnosis. The target is 18 days in the first quarter. Now in the second quarter, we expect to get that down to 16 days. And then we'll get it down to 10 days. Some miracle happens in Q3 where we almost cut it in half. And then a minor improvement in Q4. Now that's an objective and key result. But what we know is most objectives and key results can only be achieved if the team works cross-functionally. So for this clinic, what they also needed to do is improve their scheduling process. In the current rate was about a 30% vacancy rate. In other words, 30% of a doc's schedule was left unscheduled. The goal was to get that from 30% to 27, doing some process improvement work down to 15, further process improvement down to 10%, and then finally down to 7%. The third thing that they needed to do was strike a contract with new labs. Their lab time was deplorable. So in Q1, they're going to identify new candidate labs. They're going to contract by Q2, onboard by Q3, and improve performance in Q4. So what happens is these two activities in Q3, the onboarding of new clinics and improving their scheduling efficiency, is what caused this miracle in Q3. So this OKR begins to show how the clinic has to work cross-functionally for success. And in many of our clinics, this also shows the importance of the back office functions, IT, finance, scheduling, and so forth, because that's how it is we can improve a doctor's performance and offload from docs things that they just don't really want to do. So that's an OKR. Now, the OKRs themselves are important. It's having the right data is critical, but we also need to begin working as a team, and teams talk to each other. So there are a series of meetings that we need the clinic to undergo. So 3 types: tactical, operational, and strategic. Tactical, think of having a weekly meeting. And it could be a call-in meeting or an in-person meeting where you spend about 80% of the time reviewing performance, about 20% taking corrective action. And this meeting could either be with the back office people or with the docs or a combination of those. But typically in clinics, the back office team meets separate from the docs, and the docs team is a much shorter one. So each week you have that meeting where you look at those performances and take action. Once a month, we have a slightly bigger meeting where we're going to be spending less time looking at performance and taking action to create more time looking at implications. So what we find is shifts in doctor availability, in clinic availability, lab performance, and so forth need a broader view, and we need to sort of look at a month's data before we get clarity on those. That goes on every single month. What we're now proposing you add in is a new type of meeting. Once a quarter, the board, the leadership team need to get together and, touch on performance, touch on the implications, but spend lots of time on the strategic issues. So we're going to be modifying the strategy quarter to quarter. So effectively, we're going to set a new strategy or new priorities. So it's now purple. We run the next quarter with that new set of objectives. And again, you get together looking at the strategy and the performance, and you may need to change it again. So what we're seeing here is this organization is undergoing 4 learning cycles in the same amount of time that you currently have one. What does this enable? This enables you to be far more agile in the marketplace and be able to adapt to changes in the issues that you're dealing with, capacity of doctors, availability at clinics, and so forth. So that augments the actual OKRs with the management practices that go beneath it. Now, in truth, OKRs don't solve all your issues, but they solve a lot. So we find that typically what we find is performance improves by about 20%. You get a 20% boost in performance with no extra cost. We find that we get much better alignment across the organization, and this is particularly important in complex organizations like yours. Thirdly, we find that there's better clarity on the results that you're trying to achieve, like clarity on who's accountable for it, what specifically they're supposed to be doing, and what that target is, when they're supposed to be having it done by, and most importantly, perhaps, why they're doing it. Fourthly, we find that it allows the organization to have fast follow-through on performance issues. And finally, it makes sure that the activities you do are focused on results that enable the clinic. So those are the sorts of benefits you can see. And obviously the desire is that 20% boost in productivity and performance, but you also get other things like better employee engagement and so forth. Now, the OKRs are part of a broader management practice that you as the executive suite need to manage, which includes risk management, budgeting, process improvement, project selection, and rewards and compensation. And the OKRs are kind of this journey here, where we're going to work taking your strategy, link it to the activities you do, and then build your OKRs. So we want to be clear that there are other elements to your management practices that you can bolt onto OKRs later, but this is the starting point. So that's a quick overview of OKRs. What we now want to do is move on to show you how you can build this in the clinic in about 5 phases, or typically 5 days. The 5 phases to build your OKR system start off with a half-day session with you, the leadership team. In that half-day session, what we'll be doing is building your strategy map. So the strategy map converts your existing strategy into a prioritized strategy map, which we can then link your existing targets onto to give the corporate level or top level OKRs. Now, this is a sample strategy map from a different clinic. Yours would look a bit like this. Now, this isn't correct. We need to work with your leadership team, but you've got a high focus on supporting your overall community and delivering value beyond just the economics. And so your strategy map takes those objectives, and these we just lifted off of your website. So it's things about live our compassionate culture, nurturing our community that we live in, mitigating risk, and so forth. And then your leadership team needs to prioritize these. So if this is 100% your strategy, how do you allocate the 100% of your efforts or money or people over the next year? And so in this example, we've prioritized them with a strong focus between nurturing your community, building relationships, and delivering comprehensive care. So your leadership team can then set the direction for this year and for multiple years in the future. And these weightings begin to set the direction for the organization. So you can then go back to your day jobs, and what we'll be doing is using a performance team for phase 2. What that performance team is typically your direct reports or people who are process experts. And what they're going to do is we're going to be taking your strategy and those objectives and priorities down the left and your core processes across the top. Now, these core processes are things you do in aid of these objectives. So we should be able to score the impact of each of these processes on strategic success. So this clinic wants to dominate their markets, and business operations, which includes scheduling, has an impact of 1 out of 5. Now, all we do for this cell is we multiply 1 by 4, or 4 strategy points, so it's a light gray. This one down here is 5 times 8, or 20. It's a darker gray. This one's 3 times 15, or 45. That makes it turn black. So the darker the cell, the more critical the performance is. Or to say it another way, the black cells here are this clinic's critical performance nodes. If they don't do the black cells correctly, they will be out of business. So now if I run business operations, I'm going to set up my objectives and key results around these 3 areas where the black cells are. Whereas if I'm doing, say, marketing, I have a different focus, or compliance, or clinical quality. So each area can now begin to figure out what are their priorities for OKRs. So we can then build this thing, which we call a departmental ontology, and from there they can develop their departmental objectives and key results. So using this technique and objective breakdown structure, we can sort out for each of those black nodes what are the sub-objectives they need to do. And this clinic determined which objectives to include based on level of effort. So anything that was less than 4,000 hours a quarter wasn't worth including. What they then did is work with their team to do what I call show and tell. What we're doing is everyone is going to show their objective breakdown structure to the other teams in a cross-functional meeting and look for overlaps and underlaps. Overlaps is when 1 or 2 different departments are trying to do the same thing. That's an overlap and a potential conflict. Or an underlap is where one team thinks the other team's doing it and vice versa. So this allows us to get clarity around the objectives and ownership. From there, we can create the team key results, which aggregate up to your corporate results. And then finally, we can make sure that we have alignment across the departments with those OKRs and performance levels. Now, at this point, effectively, your OKRs are built, but what we will do on the next phase is actually put it into some cloud-based tool. So there's dozens of tools out there. We can help you choose one that will work best for you and your systems. For about $10 a user a month, you get to see, all the results, how you're performing, what progress you're making, and so forth. And this tool allows you to manage the business effectively. In fact, allows everyone to see what's going on in the clinic long before your performance meetings. That makes the meetings far more productive and effective. Finally, the 5th phase is to teach you how to run those meetings. Those meetings I described earlier, the weekly, monthly meetings, those quarterly reset of the objectives, and the annual reset of your plans. So the 5 phases basically have 2 groups. The C-suite, where on day 1 they're going to create the strategy map. The performance team, which will be taking that to build the department level objectives and key results. We'll review it with you at the end of phase 3. Then the team will put it into a tool, agree on how we're going to run those meetings, and then review that with you. Typically, this takes about 5 elapsed days to get your OKR system up and running. So I hope this gives you a good overview of what OKRs are and how you might be able to put them into premium healthcare. Thanks for your time.